I never imagined that one day I would become the person who not only defied the world's cruel expectations, but also rewrote the narrative of my own life. My name is Maya, and for as long as I can remember, my body was a source of constant shame and ridicule. Growing up in a small town in the Midwest, I was always the overweight kid, the one who stood out in kindergarten not for her bright smile or clever jokes, but for the extra weight I carried, a weight that only grew heavier as the years passed. While my classmates spent their days discovering what made them special, I was left to wonder what was so wrong with me. The taunts began early. I was called names, teased mercilessly, and made to feel like an outcast even in the confines of what was supposed to be my safe haven, my family. It wasn't just the other kids at school who bullied me. The venom seeped into every corner of my life. Teachers would sometimes glance at me with pity, and family gatherings became arenas of subtle judgment. My parents, though they loved me in their own way, seemed more proud of my younger sister Bonnie, whose effortless charm and magnetic personality drew friends and compliments like moths to a flame. Bonnie was the golden child, the one who made every social occasion bright, while I was left lurking in the shadows, my only solace found in books and quiet moments of introspection. The turning point came on a day I will never forget. A day that began with the harsh echo of laughter and ended with a revelation that shattered the remnants of my self-doubt. I had just returned home from another long day of feeling invisible at college, where I struggled with the constant reminder of being the ugly one. As I walked through the creaky door of our old family house, I was hit with the familiar chorus of snide remarks. My parents and Bonnie were gathered in the dining room, their voices a mixture of cheerful banter and subtle barbs aimed squarely at me. I barely heard the greetings as I retreated to my room, feeling that familiar, crushing loneliness. That night, lying awake in the darkness, I made a decision. I would no longer let the cruelty of others, including those who were supposed to love me, dictate my self-worth. I vowed to transform not just my body, but the very way I saw myself. The next morning, I began a journey that would span years. A journey of grueling workouts at the local gym, meticulously planned diets, and soul-searching therapy sessions. I discovered a strength within me that I had never known existed. Every drop of sweat, every moment of pain at the gym became a step towards reclaiming the confidence that had been stolen from me by years of mockery and neglect. As the months turned into years, the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. I lost pounds, and, more importantly, I shed the weight of the hurt and self-doubt that had clung to me like a second skin. I reinvented my wardrobe, embracing styles that made me feel vibrant and alive, and I even took the plunge with a bold hair makeover, a decision that symbolized my rebirth. For the first time in my life, I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who was proud, confident, and unapologetically herself. Strangers began to notice, complimenting me on my appearance and the radiant energy I exuded. The validation I had long craved finally began to fill the empty spaces inside me. Despite my newfound confidence, the scars of the past were not so easily erased. One day, after a particularly long and satisfying workout, I received an invitation from my family for a reunion, an event that would force me to confront the people who had once made me feel so worthless. With mixed emotions, I decided to attend, hoping that my transformation would speak for itself, and perhaps even mend some of the old wounds. I arrived at the reunion with cautious optimism, determined to face whatever came my way with the strength I had worked so hard to build. The moment I stepped into the dining room, I could feel every pair of eyes on me. My parents greeted me with forced smiles, and Bonnie, who had once been my pillar of support, regarded me with a look that was hard to decipher. Was it pride, jealousy, or something else entirely? The air was thick with tension, as the conversation quickly turned to family matters. Our relatives, ever eager to comment on appearances and lifestyles, began to make snide remarks about my weight loss. One uncle remarked loudly, "Wow, Maya, I hardly recognized you. You've really changed. Maybe now you'll finally settle down like Bonnie." His voice dripped with condescension, and I felt the old sting of their judgment. Bonnie, seated next to our parents, leaned in with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You know, Maya," she said, in a tone that was both teasing and dismissive, "I never thought you'd ever look this good. It's like you were always meant to be something else, something better." Her words, wrapped in a veneer of false sweetness, cut deep. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a mix of anger and sorrow rising within me as I recalled all the years of feeling like an outsider, the relentless bullying that had once defined my every thought. I forced a smile, trying to maintain the calm I'd worked so hard to cultivate, but inside, a storm was brewing. Later that evening, after a tense dinner filled with awkward silences and hushed whispers, I found a quiet corner in the backyard where I could escape the oppressive atmosphere. There, under the soft glow of string lights and the cool night sky, I allowed myself to finally let go of the pent-up emotions. I called my best friend Laura, whose unwavering support had been a lifeline through the darkest times. Over the phone, her voice was gentle and understanding as she listened to me recount the day's events. "Maya, I know how hard this must have been for you," she said softly. "Remember, your worth isn't determined by what they say. You're amazing just the way you are." Her words, like a balm on my raw heart, reminded me that I had the power to rise above the cruelty of others. In the days that followed, I began to plan for a future that was entirely my own. I started documenting my journey, not just the physical transformation, but the emotional one as well. I wrote long posts on online forums, sharing every painful memory and every hard-won victory. I detailed the relentless bullying of my childhood, the isolation I felt at family gatherings, and the transformative moment when I finally decided to reclaim my self-worth. To my surprise, the response was overwhelming. Strangers from all over the country reached out with words of encouragement, sharing their own stories of overcoming adversity. In the digital space, I found a community that celebrated self-love and resilience, and it was there that I truly began to heal. Meanwhile, back home, the dynamics within my family continued to unravel. My parents, who had always been so obsessed with appearances and societal expectations, began to voice their discontent with the changes I had undergone. During a particularly heated phone call, my mother said in a tone that was both accusatory and hurtful, "Maya, I just don't understand why you feel the need to change everything about yourself. You were always our little girl, and now you act like someone else entirely." My father echoed similar sentiments, his words laden with disappointment and a hint of jealousy. Even Bonnie, who had once been the light of my life, seemed to resent the attention I was receiving. At a family gathering, after a few too many glasses of wine, she confronted me in front of everyone, her voice rising with a mix of bitterness and insecurity. "Maya, what happened to you? I thought you were happy just the way you were. Now it seems like you're trying so hard to outshine me. Do you really think you can just change who you are and expect us all to be okay with it?" Her words, meant to belittle me, only fueled the fire inside me. I stood up, my heart pounding with a mix of rage and deep-seated hurt, and replied, "Bonnie, I changed because I had to. I spent my whole life feeling invisible and worthless, and I decided it was time to stand up for myself. I worked hard, I sacrificed, and I found the strength to be who I truly am. If that makes you uncomfortable, then maybe you should look in the mirror." The room fell silent, and for a moment I saw a flash of regret in Bonnie's eyes before she quickly masked it with a sarcastic laugh. Our parents, ever the peacemakers, tried to diffuse the tension with platitudes about family unity and acceptance, but the damage was done. I could feel the years of humiliation and neglect coalescing into a single, searing moment of truth. That night, as I lay in my room reflecting on the day's events, I realized that my journey was far from over. The transformation I had achieved was not just physical. It was an evolution of my soul, a shedding of the old self that had been defined by fear and self-doubt. I knew that I had to continue fighting for my happiness, even if it meant standing alone against the judgment of those who claimed to love me. Over the next few months, I threw myself into building a life that celebrated my newfound confidence. I enrolled in courses that furthered my passion for creative writing and self-expression, and I began to mentor others who had faced similar struggles with body image and self-esteem. I started hosting small support group meetings at a local community center where people could come together to share their stories of overcoming bullying and embracing their true selves. These gatherings became a source of immense strength for me, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is hope and healing to be found in community. Yet, despite all these positive changes, the shadow of my past continued to linger. Whenever I scrolled through social media, I was bombarded with images and comments from those who still clung to the old narratives, the ones that defined me as the overweight, unloved girl who never measured up. There were days when the hurt threatened to overwhelm me, when I questioned whether the cost of transformation had been too high, but then I would remember the voices of strangers who had reached out to me, the gentle encouragement of friends like Laura, and the quiet moments of triumph when I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who had overcome so much. One crisp fall afternoon, I received an unexpected message from a longtime acquaintance, Jason, who had once been one of the few people to treat me with kindness during my school years. His message was simple. "Maya, I saw your post about your journey. I just want you to know that I'm proud of you. Keep shining." His words, though brief, rekindled a sense of belonging that I had long forgotten. I replied, "Thank you, Jason. Your words mean more than you know." It was a small gesture, but it reminded me that healing was a collective journey, one that was enriched by every act of kindness and understanding. As the day of Bonnie's wedding approached, I found myself at a crossroads. Part of me longed to attend and face the family that had once belittled me, to show them the woman I had become. Yet another part of me feared that stepping back into that toxic environment would reopen old wounds and subject me to further ridicule. The decision weighed heavily on my heart, and I spent sleepless nights pondering whether I could find the strength to confront the past head-on. Finally, after much soul-searching and encouragement from my support group, I decided that I would attend the wedding, not to please my family, but to affirm my own worth. I wanted to stand tall in the face of their judgment, to show them that I had transcended the cruelty of my youth and forged a new path for myself. The day of the wedding arrived, the sky clear and blue, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions that churned within me. As I entered the venue, I was met with a mix of surprised glances and hushed whispers. My parents greeted me with a strained smile, and Bonnie, adorned in her bridal attire, looked at me with a complicated expression that I could barely decipher. The air was thick with tension, every word and gesture loaded with years of unspoken grievances. During the reception, I found a quiet moment to step outside and catch my breath. There, in the cool evening air, I allowed myself a small smile as I realized that I had finally come full circle. I had turned the pain of my past into the strength that fueled my present, and though the scars remained, they no longer defined me. As the celebration wound down, I knew that I was at a turning point, a moment where I had to decide whether to let the past continue to hold me hostage or to embrace the future with open arms. I chose the latter, vowing to build a life that honored my journey, my triumphs, and even the pain that had shaped me. I left the wedding with a heart that was heavy with memories, but light with the promise of new beginnings. About 2 months later, I can feel the weight of the past finally lifting off my shoulders. The voices that once mocked me, the taunts that tried to define me by my size and my scars, have all been drowned out by the inner strength I've discovered along the way. I have carved out a life where self-love is the guiding light, and where I no longer allow the cruelty of others to dictate my worth. I look back on the days when I was bullied by family and peers, when the bitterness of resentment festered inside me, and I realize that those wounds, though deep, have also been the source of my transformation. Meanwhile, those who reveled in my suffering, the ones who thought that their harsh words could keep me down, are now drowning in the consequences of their own insecurities and envy. My sister, whose scorn once cut like a knife, now faces the loneliness of a heart filled with regret. And my parents, whose misguided pride and shallow judgments could never see the real me, are left questioning their own failures. I see in their eyes a flicker of recognition, a silent admission that their cruelty has cost them more than they ever imagined. They are trapped in a cycle of self-inflicted pain, and while I cannot change their hearts, I have learned to rise above their broken reflections. In this open chapter of my life, I choose to embrace the beauty of imperfection, the strength found in vulnerability, and the freedom that comes from knowing who I truly am. My journey has taught me that the most profound transformation begins from within, and that true happiness is found not in the approval of others, but in the love we give ourselves. I leave behind the shadows of my past with no bitterness, only a deep and abiding hope for a future where kindness and authenticity prevail. If you have ever felt the sting of harsh words, the weight of relentless judgment, or the pain of being misunderstood, know that you are not alone. Share your story, your struggles, and your triumphs, and let us build a community where our scars are celebrated as marks of survival, and our voices, however soft, are heard and cherished. How have you turned your pain into power? What steps have you taken to reclaim your self-worth in the face of adversity? I invite you to join the conversation, to let your experiences be a beacon for others, and to remind the world that every hurtful moment is also a chance to rise, to transform, and to live unapologetically. The journey continues, and together we can light the way for those still lost in the darkness.